I was watching one of your videos and like right in the moment I was inspired and I was like, that's the key. So I just emailed the two companies. They have both replied and both said, let's talk. So what should we talk about?
Everything is sponsorable. If you have influence, if you have an asset that you can influence other people, whether it's a conference, a podcast, a book, it doesn't matter, but it's gotta serve your audience.
Amen. Amen, brother. You got it. My name is Tiago Forte. I am the founder of Forte Labs, a creator company, and most well known as the author and creator of Building a Second Brain, which is a book, a course, a podcast, you name it, about how to create a system that has all your best ideas, your insights, your knowledge in one central place in your computer.
Hey, I'm Julia Saxena, and I'm the director of marketing at Forte Labs, and I help reach more people around the world to help them build a second brain. And I work at Forte Labs for 2.5 years, mainly focused on everything marketing, content, and also sponsorships. So I'm really hoping to get out of this some more clarity around our sponsorship strategy.
Love it. Well, thrilled to have both of you here. I am a BASB alum, so this is a particular honor, I would say. And I also actually selfishly got a lot of inspiration for stuff to implement in my own course from going through your program. So thanks for that. Yes. But yeah, thrilled to talk about your sponsorship strategy today. So why don't we just give me the quick and dirty version. So tell me, what has been your experience working with sponsors to date? It sounds like you've done some. You've got a lot of different, I guess you could say, media properties. You've got the newsletter, you've got YouTube, you've got social, you've got a summit, in-person summit happening soon. So you've got a lot of different things. So talk to me about what your approach has been to sponsors to date.
Yeah, why don't you take that one, Julia?
Sure. Yeah, so far we have worked with sponsors on 2 different mediums. So one is YouTube, where we've done dedicated sponsored videos. So it's really one video sponsored by a brand that is just around that brand's product or a particular feature that Tiago's tried out. And we've really totally given that a spin. And the second one is the newsletter sponsorships. So we have a weekly newsletter that goes out every Tuesday that's now reaching over 125,000 people. And in there, we have a sponsorship slot reserved and have sort of placed sponsorship ads there from brands.
And have all these sponsors been inbound, or are these opportunities that you're reaching out and pitching these sponsors?
Yeah, these have been all inbound, to be honest. Mostly of brands that we've already been sort of in contact with because they are sort of in our field. For example, other note-taking apps or other tools that are really adjacent to the productivity space and that help people get more done. So it's those brands that we've worked with always felt like a kind of a natural fit for us.
Second part of this question: how do you feel about doing sponsorships generally, compared to as someone who also, has customers, right? You sell things directly to your audience. You have courses in education and things like that. Where does sponsorship fall in terms of your personal preferences? In terms of is it just a nice added revenue stream, or is it something that you kind of feel a little bit of an aversion? You get this feeling in the back of your throat, I don't want to do that. Walk me through the psychology there for you, Tiago.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like I've gone on a journey with this. If you asked me maybe 5 years ago, I would have said almost complete aversion. But I think I've come a long way, partly through consuming your content, watching your videos, watching other creators and the paths that they've taken and the mindset shifts they've had to be more open to it, seeing it done in a high integrity way, in an aligned way, all these different things I've experienced. To the point that, maybe we'll find out differently, but I don't feel like I have an emotion-based inherent aversion to it. My questions are much more about the how, the logistics, the bandwidth, the strategy, things like that.
Okay, good. All right. Well, we can dig into that today. So I always like to talk about both of these things because I feel like a lot of people gloss over this. I always think everyone loves sponsorships, but a lot of people are no, that's terrifying, right? So good to know. So a sponsor comes inbound, Julia. They're saying, hey, we would love to, work with y'all over here. What's the qualification process look like? Do you we'll hop on a call? Do you vet them over email? Is it a little bit of both? Walk me through that.
Yeah, it's mostly email exchange, to be honest. And what I'm looking for in vetting brands is if they are just kind of aligned with our brand. Are they in our space? because we also get a lot of pitches from brands which do something just completely different. Like, why does he even think of us? It just doesn't feel. I'm looking for something that I, as also a member of our audience, would be interested in, would be something that I would myself like to try. So if we and our team, if we're excited about the product, about the feature, then it's something that I would feel comfortable putting in front of our audience. And another criteria is also then, does it fit within, does their budget fit within our sponsorship sort of like target revenue that we want to make per ad? Those are what I would say the main two things.
And how have you set those ballpark rates? Like, where did that come from?
I think those were just kind of like we made them up.
There we go. All right. I love to say, you know what? It's okay. Like, everyone makes it up. Like that's how, like, that's what we did. It's okay to say that. I appreciate your candor there. Real quickly, I want to go back and challenge you on something real quick, which is, how do you know whether something that you are evaluating personally, or even your team, you share it around and you say, does this feel like a good fit? How do you know whether your audience will get thrilled about it? It may not be something that you guys are all personally on board with, like, I don't know, this seems like a little out of left field. I'm curious, is there any sort of feedback process happening with your audience to include them in the vetting process? And this might be a little bit of a weird question, but it's like, I'm wondering, like, how are you incorporating the psychographics of your audience in this vetting process?
Not currently, to be honest. It's more like when the ad has run or when we've produced the sponsored YouTube video, then we look at the feedback. We look at the comments on the video itself, like how it did, or to the newsletter if we got specific responses and how many clicks the ads got. And if those are positive, then we can assume like, oh, okay, this went great, and we would work again with that brand. And if not, then probably not.
So I think this is a big opportunity, like a learning moment here, which is that this should be done before you accept the sponsorship, not after, right? Because it's actually like you're doing a disservice to your audience if you all vetted internally and you're like, this is a great fit. And then it goes out and it performs really poorly. Either people don't respond to it favorably. It's not something that they are really stoked about. And so I think that this is like the missing piece. I say a lot that like sponsorships have to be win-win-win. A lot of creators get very myopic about the first two, which is like, yeah, I'm winning. I'm getting paid. It's a good fit. The brand is winning clearly because I'm exposing their product or service to my audience. But it's that last piece about the audience winning that is so often missed from the sponsorships that we construct. And what I say is that if there's no component of the audience winning, you have to engineer the win. And so this can take a lot of different forms. So the first and easiest way to start involving them, rather than just being like, hey, we just got this inbound request from a brand. Would you guys like to see this? Like, you don't want to do that, obviously. But it's actually a little bit easier. So I know you guys are great at soliciting feedback from your audience for especially from your students and your alumni and your community for your programs. But the same activity, the same kind of surveying activity should be implemented for your free audience, I guess you could say, of non-customers, right? Of these 120,000 people that you have on the newsletter. Imagine if, and maybe you already have this data, but imagine if you put together what I call an audience first survey, and it has about 7 or 8 questions on it, and you say the following. You say, hey, we are planning out our content strategy for the next quarter or for the next, year, and I want to make sure that what we are creating serves you. I want to make sure that we're actually giving you something that will actually help you, right? And so would you mind taking a quick, like 6 or 7 question, survey, 30 seconds, mean a lot to me. Here it is. 1 sentence email, right? And so in this survey, you're asking questions like, do you have a partner? Do you have kids? What type of jobs do you have? How are you consuming my content? Is it in line at Starbucks for 2 minutes, or is it you sit down every Sunday and you consume the last 3 weeks of my newsletters or YouTube videos or whatever? What brands and products and services are you using or interested in right now, and why? You're saying, hey, are there other peers in the industry that you'd love to see me collaborate with, and why? Right? Also, are there things that you wish that I offered that I don't? like actual direct products. And so those last three questions are the most critical because you get this trifecta of psychographic data where what I call it's your PSA, your products, your sponsors, and your alliances. And this is your three ways in which you can serve your audience. So the first is like the products. Obviously, you guys have got that down pat. You've got the community, you've got the courses, you've got the, summit soon, you've got all that stuff. So you're serving them in that way. And that's been your formative, that has been the genesis of Forte Labs, right? And it's that second piece where it's like, actually, I know we've been so focused on helping our students achieve a transformation with our own stuff, but are there brands and products and services that could help them achieve a similar transformation? Maybe not the same one that we're offering with our own stuff, but whether it's a software tool, whether it's a SaaS tool, whether it's a conference, whether it's something from some other entity is going to help them accomplish, maybe make their life whole in a slightly different way than we are with our own products. And then that final bucket of alliances maybe is like, hey, other friends, other peers in the industry who offer life coaching or offer business coaching or offer another course or some other product where you get all this data back from this survey and people are like, oh, I feel really solid with my second brain now and I feel much more productive, but my relationships are suffering in my life, my friendships or my love life or my something, or I want to get ahead at work and I want to use this to be able to get a promotion or find a new job or something. And these are like things that you're never really ever going to offer like as products, right? And so your job becomes a proactive approach to go out there and find other people, other peers, other brands that could serve as that bridge to help your audience or your customers accomplish a either orthogonal transformation or a parallel transformation to what you're already offering. So how's this resonating?
I love this. I've heard you. So in preparation for this call, I listened to and watched, I think around 7 or 8 or 9 of your recent videos. I have here in my second brain, you'd be very proud, like extensive notes. And it's been cool to watch enough videos that I start to see the same principles, frameworks, patterns, and I'm like, oh, there are principles at work here.
Yeah.
And I've heard you give this advice. I even put it here in the highlights.
Yeah.
I think it's such a powerful way. Like it's funny. I think in some ways, and I'm sure this is common, our current weaknesses come directly from our past strengths. So for example, we're so good at productivity. That's our thing. That's our niche. We go after that so hard. And I think in some ways we still think of ourselves merely as a productivity course company. Even though we've grown so far beyond that in so many ways, we still I think largely vet, for example, is this a productivity tool or not? Is this related to productivity or not? And so that's part of, I think, the mindset shift you're talking about. But this survey, we're actually in the midst of a segmentation project right now where we're asking some of those same questions, but other ones not at all. None of the questions are really related to outside alliances and other brands and products. And I could see it being pretty easy to kind of just incorporate that into our survey.
The other insight that I hope you'll glean from the exercise is that it's not just about the offers that you can make to your audience. It's also, interestingly, might help you create better content for your media business, because you may learn, wow, I didn't realize that like 30%, this large segment or cohort of my audience has this problem, or they're like about to graduate from college and they're really struggling, like figuring out what they want their career to be, or they're doing something. And so you could be like, wow, I should do a YouTube video around that, of like how, like you could be productive while you're on the job hunt or like something like that. So rather than looking at productivity as just like a tool, you can illustrate, it's almost like a Trojan horse. I say this a lot, where it's like, your methodologies and your principles about productivity will help people accomplish an outcome, which really at the end of the day, as you know, is like the most important the way to actually sell someone on anything, making any sort of transformation or things like that. So I'd be really interested to see like what kind of responses you get after you go through that segmentation process. Because if really the only thing you're looking for right now for vetting is like, is it productivity or not? I would venture to guess, like there's lots of other ways. Here's the thing, Tiago, like you now have crossed the chasm. You're no longer just the productivity course guy. You are a best-selling author. You've sold hundreds of thousands of books. You've had thousands of students go through you. You are now a figurehead of a movement, of an industry. You've pioneered it in many aspects. And so if you're simply vetting sponsors by thinking like, okay, is this like productivity related, or is it going to fit in this inventory for this month in our newsletter or in our YouTube video? Like, there are deals that you could go out and forge that have nothing to do with deliverables, YouTube videos, newsletters. Like, you could simply be an evangelist for certain very large organizations out there, where you go and you speak on a stage on their behalf, or you're on part of a webinar for them. And so, like, how do you quantify that? How that is a sponsorship arrangement. And so those deals are not going to come inbound, right? Those productivity SaaS tools and leather-bound notebooks are not going to come. It's not the types of brands and companies I'm talking about. And so, yeah, maybe this is a good time to transition into talking about like the role, or like how big of your business in terms of the pie sponsorships are taking currently, and maybe we can like kind of extrapolate what that could transform into.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think those kind of words, first of all, and it's funny. This is part of what brought me to this conversation, to reach out to you, to even be interested in sponsorships. Just last month, I'll just tell a little story. I had my next book acquired. This has not been announced anywhere. This is secret, but I'm now working on my next book, which is fun. And so I sat down to do a little analysis of the size of my audience in March 2020, which is when I had my first traditionally published book acquired, to March 2024. So 4 years, how my audience has grown. And I was just completely blown away by the results. Like, it already tells you something that I've never sat down to do that analysis. It was like a surprise to me. But if you add like all of our platforms, all social, newsletter, YouTube, like everything, it's gone from 20,000 followers in March 2020 to 550,000 today. That's 28x in 4 years. And I saw that, and it was honestly one of the moments in my career where my identity just shifted like that. To be honest, it was like, oh, I now need to leave the identity of a specialized niche content, like course creator, and now think of us as a media company. Like, those are media company numbers, like hundreds of thousands, approaching 7 figures within the next 2 or 3 years. And so the questions on my mind aren't just about sponsorships, but things like, how do media company CEOs think? What's important to a media company? What is the value of this audience beyond just like selling them courses? Like, what is the value? How is that value accessed? Oh, this is another thing, is that number of people is way beyond our original niche, right? So they're way more diverse. They're way more international. They're way more mainstream. They're not all on Twitter. So I'm like learning a new way of even communicating and thinking about the nature of our business, which one of the things that's led me to is you.
Well, I just want to acknowledge you for a second there, because that shift and that transition takes a lot of humility of realizing, and I've heard you speak about this before, about you have these very ambitious impact goals, right? Like being able to, have this like PKM taught in like schools to like young kids, and like how that could impact their formative years and their upbringing and stuff like that. And maybe another mindset shift I can offer you is that by forging some of these very large partnerships, that could potentially expose you to vastly different audiences of people than you currently are. So imagine if you're chief evangelist of this, Adobe or something, and not Adobe, but like some of these very large companies who are trying to on the forefronts of advancements in knowledge and a lot of these, really exciting AI advancements, for example, and things like that. Imagine if there was an amazing partnership that you could forge, and you're now that guy who is going to the conferences with them, talking about these really interesting subjects at the forefront of, LLM and all, whatever, PKM, et cetera, the intersection of those. That puts you on this totally other path of people that could learn about how you could serve them. And so that's another really exciting thing about this transition I think you're making, is that you're now thrust into the new opportunities where you can have a much larger impact that you really want. So to me, it's not just about the dollars and cents that you might make from a sponsorship, but it's more kind of partnership, ambassadorship type relationships that you could forge that could be both the dollars and cents impact as well as a actual impact.
Amen, brother. You got it. We're on the same wavelength.
Yeah. Love it. So why don't we dig into some of the like interesting things? So you did, so I'm very pleased with you as a student, because you did a lot of like preparation for this call. You did our sponsorship wheel snapshot, which is a snapshot that anyone can take at creatorwizard.com/snapshot. And so why don't we pull it up and kind of walk through it, Tiago?
Yes, absolutely. This has been a recurring discovery as I've been going through your stuff, that this world is way more sophisticated and multifaceted and complex than I thought. I think I've been very much in the creator mindset of, we just do our job of building an audience, and then somehow someone will email us offering us money. Like that's an exaggeration, but I think I've been in a very limited mindset of just how many forms this takes, how many different levers there are, how many different dimensions you can operate across. I mean, I wouldn't even guess that half of these, the axes of this graph even exist.
I love that insight. And Julia, to bring you in, when you're interacting with these sponsors, and the nice thing about inbound sponsors is, like, typically they kind of know what they want already. It's like, we want you to talk about this thing, and here's the key messages, and here's the link to click, and things like that. And so I'm curious if, as you kind of think about these different steps throughout this, if there's some insights that you had as well.
Yeah, I've noticed that I've gone through each individual step with a specific sponsor at some point, but I've never really treated them as sort of like individual steps, that each step needs kind of like care and intentionality. It's just like, oh yeah, this is the contract. Check it out and sign it, and that's it. So, but you're showing us that there's so much more to each step, where we can, as you say, everyone wins, where we can win and we can help the sponsor win, and we can also create a really great experience for the sponsor that we're working with.
Yeah, I think that there's a tendency that creators oftentimes have to look at it in a very transactional way, right? It's like, okay, they're coming inbound. Here's the price, take it or leave it. Maybe there's a little bit of negotiation, but usually it's just like, take it or leave it. Let's run it. We've got open inventory in our newsletter. Let's just do it, right? And this is, I think, why creators sometimes get burned out on the process of sponsorships, because it feels like, I don't know, maybe the juice isn't worth the squeeze. I'd rather, especially since you guys like sell your own stuff, I'd rather just like use that ad slot for our own stuff, right? Promoting our on-demand courses or whatever, right? Like, why are we going to promote a sponsor? And I think that shifting this perspective from one of a transactional one-off approach to something that is ongoing, where the chief goal is like, how can we ensure that this sponsor works with us over and over and over again? It introduces all these really exciting, I think, possibilities that you would never think of in a transactional way. For example, one really high leverage activity that every creator listening or watching this should do is providing feedback on the landing page to the sponsor. Yeah. When they send you the tracking link and they're like, hey, send people here, and you're like, I actually think this landing page sucks. Here's some copy suggestions that I would, right? Julia, you come in there and you're like, I actually think you should do here. I think we should put a picture of Tiago here. I think we should embed the video that he created here. I think we should here's the 3 reasons that, Tiago loves Evernote, or whatever it is, right? Whatever the landing page is. Because what do you think is going to happen? It's going to improve conversions. And then what do you think the brand's going to want to do? They're going to want to hire you again, right? And so it's these like really somewhat low lift activities that you can claw back as a creator, as a business, that again is going to differentiate you from all the other creators who are looking at this from a transactional perspective. So how does that sit? Actually, I'm curious, because I know you get like, I feel the same pain. It's like, we're doing so many things as a small team. It's not like we have unlimited resources. And so like what I'm thinking that this might spark in you is that like, okay, if we actually are going to create a strategy around sponsors, it might require a different approach than we've been doing.
Yeah, that resonates a lot, especially when you just mentioned that we could help them like kind of like co-create the landing page, this is never something that I considered asking, or sort of that I can ask that, right? I know that I can tweak the ad copy they gave me, and I think we've done a pretty good job at that, but actually going one step further and tweaking the landing page, I haven't even thought of that. So there's so many little things where you can really kind of like co-create the whole thing, and ultimately show the sponsor that you are really invested in their success and you're interested in the long-term relationship with them.
Another opportunity that this affords is when you illustrate to them that you actually believe it's your job to help with this kind of stuff, you now put yourself in a different category, right? Because it's like, oh, wow, they could serve us in a lot of other ways. They have a really interesting finger on the pulse of like these 120,000 really savvy professionals in their audience who are our exact consumer persona. We should actually maybe engage with them on a consulting project where Tiago can sit down or Julia can sit down with us and like think through our marketing strategy. And like that opens up a whole new revenue stream. Maybe we pay them $50K to consult with us for the year to like help them think through their product positioning. That it opens up so many opportunities for you to feed qualitative data back from your audience to them that they almost never see, because when you send out an email, you get lots of responses. And so especially if the ad copy or something resonates, or you're getting objections to the sponsor who are saying, oh, this is too expensive, or, oh, I tried that, productivity software before, it sucked. Oh, whatever. You're getting something back oftentimes. And if it's not a public YouTube comment, or a public comment on Twitter or social media, they're not seeing that data. So if you can feed that back to them and say, hey, here's the general perception of your tool right now. People said that they tried it a year ago. That then allows them to say, oh, well, good. I'm so glad to know that that's the perception, because we did a giant overhaul of the software 6 months ago. It seems like people don't know about that. Maybe the next iteration of our partnership together, this is what you say, the next iteration of the partnership together is talking about how the software has been designed from the floor up, right? And so there's just all these really interesting, like rich details that you can provide when you take more ownership over the process, rather than just like, oh yeah, put the sponsor in the inventory of the newsletter right there.
This is fantastic. It's such good advice, Justin. I think we can do that. We should do that. It's such a no-brainer because we know these people so well. We know them intimately. We know their problems. We know what they're seeking, and a lot of times we look at these companies building tools. They don't know in many cases they don't know their customers as well as we know our audience, right? And so we can actually educate them, is what I'm hearing from what you're saying.
100%. Imagine if you could say, hey, like VP of research at cool tool that I love, would you love to come in and do a guest expert session in our community for Second Brain? That is a sponsorable thing. Yeah. They come in, they sponsor the monthly, whatever, maybe they have, like, imagine if you could like forge a deal where you have like a time where some of the experts from their team or customer support people from their team come in and can like answer questions for people in your community of like how they can get the best results out of that tool or that software or that product or something. That is a uniquely cool opportunity that you could present to them, and they're a sponsor of your community for that privilege, right? So getting your course sponsored, I know you have a community/membership element of your business now, having people as ongoing sponsors of you. Like, I know I think that you've done this before, but like creating grants for people to join your courses or join, the new course that I know you guys launched recently, and like, imagine how cool it would be to be able to say to sponsor, hey, if you sponsor 20 seats of this course at X $100 or X $1,000 a pop, I will not only talk about you on social media and how much I love you, these really eligible and great candidates, students, get to participate for free thanks to you. Now they're going to love you and be evangelists on social media because you let them participate for free. And then you get more course enrollments.
Yeah.
So like being able to tap into other brands' customer bases to get more course enrollments. Holy cow. Imagine if they could brands are so sick and tired of talking about their own stuff day in and day out. That's all they do. So imagine if they could email their lists and being like, we're doing a webinar with Tiago. and 5 lucky people are going to get free enrollment to his course who show up. Man, there's so many possibilities. It could be this two-way thing. It doesn't have to just be only leveraging your organic distribution.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. I'm hearing a flywheel in what you're saying, where things build on and contribute to each other, instead of sometimes the mindset we get into is a little bit of a scarcity, like everything is taking away from each other. Oh, for me to spend more time here, I got to take time or money or energy or caring or whatever is the resource has to be pulled from somewhere else. And at the end of the day, it's all just attention, education, value, just feeding each other.
It's actually more than that. It'll energize you because it's audience first. That's the true thing. Wherever it feels like a pull, you have to remind yourself, like, this is for the audience. I'm engineering this to make sure that it helps them, whether it's, again, a product, a sponsor, or an alliance. And so this for me, because this is like my North Star, it's easy to put in the long nights sometimes, or it's easy to make things happen because I know at the end of the day, I really am doing it to serve them. And I think that this is so. One other thing I would love to chat about is like what percentage of the pie sponsorships represents for you right now as a company. I'm curious to kind of talk through that.
So I knew you were going to ask this, and I've come prepared. This is what our revenue chart looks like right now. It's changed a little bit. This is, I would say, end of last year. We've now stopped doing the cohorts, which is that bottom left piece of the pie. But I would say in general, mostly courses, increasingly books. Also, our membership is relatively new. That's ramping up. And as you can see there, about 8% has come from ads and sponsors.
Yeah. I mean, if I was to look at your business, which is to some degree still a personal brand, maybe that's, will shift. Man, ads and sponsors could become 30-40% really easily, I think. Through a lot of the things that we're talking about today. Again, these are like quite lucrative 6-figure type arrangements that you could be forging with, some of the top brands, companies, players in your industry. The real unlock to realize is that it's going to take work. It's going to take time to forge these where you're proactively going out there and presenting this to them. Because now, for better or for worse, what I like to say is that like inbound leads are a trap. This is what I say, is that inbound opportunities are a trap because they lull you into believing that, well, this is our cap from a dollar standpoint or a deal flow perspective. And it seems good because who wouldn't want inbound? They're saying they love me and they want to give me money. Like, that's great, right? Yeah. But it's a slice of humble pie to think, okay, well, actually, I have to go out there and I got to do the dance. I got to do a dog and pony show. I got to get up there in front of an executive who don't know who I am. I got to get on a Zoom call and kind of be performative and be like, this is why you want to partner with me. It feels harder, right? Obviously. But I've got lots of data to back this up, both for my personal life and career with my wife, but also the hundreds of creators that I've coached, is that the most lucrative partnerships you'll ever forge come from outbound, not from inbound. Because it's a blank slate. You can get up there and say, hey, tell me about your objectives, company X, or tell me about the goals of what's on your product roadmap, or what these big ambitious things that you're trying to launch for the next 2 years. I can help you do that in the following ways. And so that's where you get the very large budgets, because they're allocating it from scratch, not just like taking it from their Q2 budget and they're allocating a sliver to you.
Yeah, this to me, I heard you say something like this on a previous public coaching call. That was an enormous mindset shift for me. And I think, you know what it is? It's, in a way, the whole creator lifestyle, the whole creator business model is predicated on not having to do anything outbound. Like, that's the whole thing. That's the whole appeal. You just sit in your studio, your office, whatever, your garage, like I am now. You make stuff and things come to you, which is, it's beautiful that that's possible. But I more and more see what you're talking about. That if someone is coming to me, I think the way even one of your guests on your show said is like, things that come to you are fully baked. They're fully conceived. They're sort of final and therefore kind of fixed, kind of complete. Whereas we are creatives, and what we do is we originate, we envision, we formulate new kinds of things.
Can I ask a follow-up question about that? when you basically pitch brands and companies for sponsorships, how do you go about putting a price tag on the different parts that you offer that become part of the sponsorship? I know I love all of your ideas in terms of like what a partnership could look like. What I'm struggling with is like putting like in that into monetary terms that we can then both agree on.
I know, it's due. It's the due framework.
Yeah, so what Tiago's saying is it's DUE, which is deliverables, usage rights, and exclusivity. So there's these various components that you can use to kind of help try to encapsulate what the levers that you should use to price. However, I'm going to give you something that's actually easier than that. Are you ready, Julia? 2 things that I think you need to change. Number 1, stop vetting these inbound sponsors over email. Get on a call, because you can still potentially pivot some of these opportunities into more co-created, co-created projects if you're on a call and you can learn about their objectives. So that's number 1, is like try to get on a call as quickly as possible and learn about their objectives. The reason also being is that a lot of times brands don't know. They actually think that they want one thing, but they actually need something else. And so you can be somewhat prescriptive there. The second thing is that at the very end of these calls, when you get a bunch of data, you've researched questions ahead of time, you ask them the questions, you get the data. When they say, so how much does it cost to work with Tiago? Tiago, just give me a ballpark. Like, how much for a YouTube video? How much for a newsletter insertion? Because this is what they oftentimes do. And you say, well, you know what? Thank you so much, dear sponsor. This has been such a useful call. I'm going to go back. I need to chat with Tiago and the rest of the team, and we're going to come back to you with a bespoke proposal of the best way that we think we can bring this partnership to life. Typically, what we do when we submit these proposals is we send 3 to 4 different packages to give you an understanding of what this could look like. Can you tell me what I should set those 3 to 4 tiers at from a budget feasibility perspective? And then you shut up. This is very different than saying, what's your budget? Because when you say, what's your budget, they don't want to tell you, because if they say 10K, what proposal amount are you going to send them? 10K. And they don't have any wiggle room there. They don't want to tell you. And so when you give them an ability to give you a range, they now know, okay, well, if I say 10, 20, 30K, then I know that we have some sort of flex, because we're probably not just talking with Julia and Tiago. We're talking with other people too, to see who could best capably help us, move the needle on our objectives. And so they're probably trying to Tetris a larger budget together with 5 different people, right? 100K, 200K, 300K, that's the total budget. And they're allocating a sliver to you. And so if the goal is to give them an option such that they can move forward with you at some amount, rather than, well, Tiago says the only way we can work with them is like 40K or 30K or whatever, I guess it's not going to work out. And so I talk about this Moneyball approach to sponsorships. It's not just about getting the most amount of money on every single deal. No, sometimes you're going to hit a single. That's okay. Sometimes you're going to hit a double. Sometimes you'll get hit by pitch. That's cool, right? And I think at the end of the day, it's about when you give them that range, it will help you, number 1, know how seriously to take this brand and how long you should spend on the proposal. But also unlock this understanding that you may charge 2 brands different amounts for the same work, because one brand may give you 10K for a dedicated YouTube video and one brand may give you 30K. And that's okay, because you're helping them accomplish their objectives. So you no longer should have a standard rate or a place on your website where you send them, oh, click here and book this newsletter spot. No, it's going to be different for each sponsor based on how you can most capably serve them. And by the way, when you ask that question about the range, about 75% of the time they will tell you. I've found doing this across hundreds of brands, they'll usually give you something, but 25% of the time they'll say, we still don't know. We don't have a budget. You tell us, right? They're going to throw it back to you. And I totally acknowledge that. And so in these scenarios, what I like to say is you have to pick your hell yeah number, meaning that whatever package 1 is, if they choose that, you're going to say, hell yeah, let's do this. I'm super excited about this. Not like, oh God, I got to do this now. That's not what you want. And so whether it's either of those 2 scenarios, you're going to win, because you're going to feel really great about when you have some sort of range that you can operate to construct something bespoke and feel good about that. Or you're going to know that if they do pick the lowest package, like everyone's happy.
This is brilliant. What I love about that is even if they give you a huge range, which sometimes they do, because they basically don't want to tell you, but they want to tell you something, you can sort of just split it in thirds. And even if it's a vast range, do like towards the low end of that range, middle of that range, and high end of that range.
Well, the other, I mean, we could do a whole session just around package strategy, but like you're not limited by the budget they give you either, by the way. You could just kind of ignore it. You could say, oh, 10, 20, 30K, great. Here's an option at 100K. You can still stretch their imaginations of what's possible, even though they gave you a range. You could say, I know you came inbound asking about YouTube or asking about the newsletter or asking about whatever, and that's fine. But hey, guess what? We've also got this in-person summit that we're doing in October. Let's chat about that. We're actually thinking about just having one title sponsor, shout them out from the stage. We're going to, we'll do XYZ. You could figure out what that offer looks like, but they may not have even known that you had either that ability to, amplify the campaign in that other way, or knowing that you had that capability. And so this is the whole, again, the one big takeaway I hope you get is that brands change their mind all the time. They come inbound with one thing and they're like, this is what we want. And then they say, is that really what you want? And they go, actually, no, that's not what we want. We want this other thing over here. And it's your job to help them arrive to that conclusion.
I love that. It's powerful. It's powerful. It's funny. I have a case study. I was watching one of your videos, and like right in the moment I was inspired, I was actually in the jacuzzi out here in my backyard. And while still in the jacuzzi, I was watching your video and I went over to my email because I think you said something like you were encouraging someone to work with fewer sponsors, but at a deeper level. And I heard that and I was like, that's the key, because it's like relationships take time to form and to maintain. I don't really want this vast quantity of relationships. So I just emailed the two companies. If I was going to do deep, long-term strategic partnerships with any two companies, these would be the two that I would. And I emailed them right then. For one of them, I emailed the CEO because I know him. And the other one, the head of partnerships or whatever, who I also knew. They have both replied and both said, let's talk. So my next question is, what should we talk about? Or how should we conduct this call?
Not about you. Don't talk about yourself. Talk about them. Hey, what's going on the product roadmap? What are you most excited about? And then the positioning exercise is, I can help you do that by sponsoring me in the following ways. So it's not just like, oh, they're patrons of mine and they love the initiatives. Brands have much less of those dollars than they do budgets for their own initiatives to move the needle on user signups for this new feature or for their, the new V3 of their software, or, whatever, maybe awareness is the initiative that they're going after and the objective, and that's fine, but you're not going to know until you ask them. And so just go into the call researching these questions. Like, some of the things I love asking is like, asking about the goals. That's number one, most important thing. Second question is like, tell me about the macro landscape for you right now from an economic perspective, supply chain, and you having supply chain issues. If it's a physical company, tell me about the competitive landscape. Are you seeing like other competitors gaining share? Why do you think that is? So it's like, you're going to totally differentiate yourself when you're like asking them these types of questions, because no one else is doing that. And so by investing in like what's going on in their world, it's going to be so much easier for them to understand. Like, I know we allocated $500K for this like Q4 initiative, but Tiago, we had that call with him and he's saying he can actually help us. So why don't we reallocate that $100K we were going to spend on like Facebook ads over to Tiago? I think this is going to be like a better ROI for us.
It's brilliant. Yeah, I can see that happening. Both of these companies are enormous. They're some of the leaders in our space. They're growing fast. They're going global, right? And they really need allies in that expansion that they're undergoing.
Yeah. I'm honestly, I'm excited for you guys as you build out this company, because I think there's if you're able to kind of structure all the pillars right, and to you and Nathan Barry, if you can design the flywheel to get all this going where it feels great, right? And what I say is like, selling no longer feels like icky or dirty or something you do just to like keep the lights on. It feels like awesome and authentic, and you're excited to like put this brand stuff in front of your audience. It's gonna be a virtuous thing. It's going to be a virtuous cycle. You're just going to want to keep doing it, especially when you start getting that feedback from your audience, because it's just it's such a brilliant thing. When I have started, like, one quick like glimmer into like my universe is that like when I started doing a lot of this psychographic research, I realized that, and doing the segmentation survey, like it sounds like you guys are doing, two pieces of really key information. Number one, people like learning at their own pace, not the cohorts that I had been doing, right? That was number one. And then number two, my stuff was just too expensive. The cheap, $1,000 for a coaching call, or $1,500 for the on-demand course. And so that's why I decided to write a book. So I'm writing a book.
Nice.
Probably similar, and so by the way, it's called Sponsor Magnet.
Yes,
let's go. I'm so excited.
Love it.
I might need to get some tips for you. Oh, real quickly, I know you're traditionally published, but like I'm gonna get the book sponsored, Tiago.
No, that's brilliant.
How?
So because I'm self-publishing, I'm going to go after the ConvertKits of the world. You heard it here first. Nathan, I'm going to DM you. The circles of the world. And I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to have 5 channel specific sponsors for my book. And you're going to have a foreword written by Nathan for the ConvertKit edition. And you're going to be the only email marketing tool and you're going to do a foreword about how powerful email newsletters can be to get sponsorships.
Wow.
And so now, every time you are having the Craft and Commerce conference, you print 500 of those books, give them out away to attendees. I get more distribution. I get more book sales. I am also sponsored. That's a sponsorable thing. And like everything is sponsorable. If you have influence, if you have an asset that you can influence other people, whether it's a conference, a podcast, a book, it doesn't matter. Like everything is sponsorable. But again, it's got to serve your audience.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I love that way of thinking.
Yeah, so maybe this next deal for the book you signed, you got to do the self-pub, man, because then you could get it sponsored. Maybe it's too late, but
I mean, I'm open to all kinds of models. Speaking of everything is sponsorable, I don't know if we have time, but the summit is such an interesting opportunity on this front because people kind of expect that, and sponsors also expect it. It's sort of just like a natural part of summits, I'm finding. Mm-hmm. But do you have any advice about how to approach that, or some of the questions to ask around that?
Well, let me first ask, because I was looking at the website and I saw under the FAQ that you were not accepting sponsors at this time. So why did you decide to make that decision?
That decision was inspired by Chris Guillebeau. He has a conference called World Domination Summit.
Yeah.
And he said that they decided early on to not have corporate sponsors. And it wasn't, as with me, it wasn't really an ideological or like a values decision or anything like that. It was more just to preserve bandwidth. Like we have so much to do just putting on the summit. We didn't feel like we had that space. However, I actually am open to it. I think if we did it, we would keep it limited, kind of like you said, like maybe just one sponsor or 2 or 3. But I think I'm a bit hesitant because it comes back to the same thing. I don't really know how to do outbound for that. Like I don't really know where to start.
I'm gonna show you a graphic real quick that might unlock something for you. So we've all seen this, chart, this bridge, right? When especially as course creators, our job is to help someone from our audience or a prospective customer achieve some sort of specific transformation. And almost always we're the bridge to help accomplish that. And what we talked about earlier is realizing that brands can also do that. They can also serve as the catalyst, as the bridge to help your audience accomplish a transformation. And so when you're thinking about how to go after sponsors and how to talk to them about why they should be sponsors of the summit, it's looking at this graphic. It's thinking, what sponsors, like knowing the persona of the types of people who are going to come there, whether it's alumni of Second Brain or whether it's new people who are just getting indoctrinated into our universe. What are the types of brands and products that if we were to get that in front of them could help them meaningfully accomplish something? And so you may not have the answer right now. It may come from the segmentation surveys that you're starting to design or some maybe new surveys that you actually do. But I think it's that. I think it's really understanding, like, maybe it isn't a productivity tool. Maybe it isn't a productivity software that we get. That's the obvious one. But like, maybe there are some other, maybe it's like a entrepreneurs society or, some sort of other, organization or something that has a membership or coaching or services or something of something that you really resonate, something that you really believe in, that the mission and the values of that organization are really well aligned with the attendees of this summit. And so the beautiful part about that is that they're going to be way more willing to have a conversation now because it's a much more intriguing idea. They also may have only been used to sponsoring, creators or summits in their own industry. But now you're over here coming and saying like, oh, actually, I think there's this totally untapped market segment that I don't think that you're speaking to right now, i.e. our community, our audience who are going to be attending this conference. So I don't know if that unlocked anything for you, but I think the missing piece that you don't quite know yet is this psychographic stuff you need to get from your audience.
Yeah, that's really interesting because it's actually kind of funny. When we sat down to initially conceive of the summit, we immediately decided this can't be a summit about productivity. That's super boring. People aren't going to fly across the country, and stay multiple days here to talk about productivity. Productivity is a means to an end, always. And so the theme of the conference is digital creativity. Creativity is something that's more expansive, more inspiring, honestly. But that also opens up and suddenly brings into the fold, into the space of possibilities, much different kinds of products and services and experiences.
Okay, so I have a great idea for you. This is not going to work out because of the timing. Okay, but I opened Canva this morning, and the very first thing that I was served when I opened Canva was we have our Canva Create Summit that we're launching on May 23rd. You can either get a free virtual registration or we're doing an in-person thing in Hollywood Park. Grab your in-person ticket. So like imagine if the timing worked out where this summit was like in December or January or February or something, and you were to go to Canva and say, hey, come sponsor the Second Brain Summit where we're helping people harness digital creativity. We'd love for you to be a sponsor because this is exactly the type of person that you want to get in front of. That's a great sponsor for your summit.
I never would have thought of Canva. I never would have considered Canva, but when you put it that way, it's extremely aligned. It's extremely aligned. Wow.
You should probably pitch Canva anyway. Like they're probably doing something. They're probably doing something in like Q4 or Q1 or something. But I mean, I think there's so much opportunity here for you again to just like, really serve your community in a beautiful way by, having folks like Canva. I mean, that's a great example of like, especially as you tap into newer audiences. Like Julie, I was reading one of your newsletters right before this around how creating some lower price offerings shook loose a lot of new customers of people who were priced out from some of your, higher priced products. And so as you think to serve your audience and your customers on more of a continuum of like where everyone is at, you're thinking about these really interesting and new ways to serve not just the real productivity like enthusiasts, but a beginner person who really wants to be more creative. They do want to be more productive, but they just really don't know where to start. Something like Canva would cater really well to a customer like that.
What do you think, Julia?
That sounds really interesting. Yeah, we have not considered that. I think we have been, a little bit thinking inside our little productivity PKM box, but there's so much outside of that.
If you both had to think of one main takeaway from our conversation today, what would it be?
For me, it would be focusing on the relationship, like treating sponsorships as relationships first, thinking about the long term, thinking about how all three parts can win. We as a brand, their company, and our audience as well.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I think for me, it's it's kind of thinking of sponsorships, this arena, as something that I can proactively create and shape and forge the kinds of relationships I want to have, the experiences I want to create, the offers that I want to make, rather than just kind of sitting back and having it done to me.
I love that. Well, I'm so excited for 4 years from now when you go back and do the next recap to see how far you've come since this moment. And I know it's going to be completely transformed.